So anyway, everybody, thank you very much for coming back so promptly. We have a big panel, as you can see, packed with very interesting, influential, accomplished, experienced people. If you want to know more about what they've done, please take a look in your booklet because all their bios are there. And I want to move on very quickly with this session, so I'll just be telling you their titles. We'll get right into it. Each person will speak for, say, between 3 to 5 minutes on the topic. And then I'll ask them some questions. We'll go with that for a little while. And then we'll be going to you, members of the audience. So I would like you to think of questions. And I'm, as you know, a stickler for time. I'm also a stickler that it's a question, that it's not a polemic, it's not a statement, it's not a rant. I would just ask for questions, please, because there's so much to be learned and so much to explore. So questions would be terrific, if you don't mind. So we'll do that. And the plan is to wrap it up around 12:15 so that everybody can then go and get their break for lunch and then move on to the different sessions. So as you can see from your running order, this is about innovation rich versus innovation poor, investing in the right education. So this will be quite a lively discussion, I think. And first off, we're going to start with Ronan Dunne, who is the CEO of Telefonica UK. Ronan, take it away.
Thank you, Margaret, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to join you today to talk about this really important subject. And if I may thank Marcus Seagal earlier for both a great session and stealing almost all of my points. I'd actually like to, the luxury of being first, is turn the debate a little bit on its head, and rather than talk about things like innovation poor or skills gap, is actually talk about what I see as an opportunity gap. We undertook some research recently that highlighted the fact that the digital skills among Europe's young, and all too often, unfortunately, unemployed, is actually higher than the level of digital skills within the workforce. And actually, as my local young people minister in the UK, Nick Hurd, said recently, the generation coming through are one of the most creative, generous, socially responsible and entrepreneurial generations that Europe has produced for a very, very long time. I think the key challenge for us is how we engage and connect with young people to unleash this potential, something that is in clearly all of our interests. From a company, from a Telefonica perspective, from a business perspective, this can't simply be a nice to do, but something we must do. And I believe our economic as well as our societal well-being depends on it. So to achieve this, in my view, we need to make education more work relevant and help our young people to become more work ready for the economy of the future. And I do believe this is not a demand that we place on the education sector, but a responsibility that we all need to step up to. We recently commissioned a further piece of research to assess the true scale of the opportunity gap. And the report found that in the UK alone, there's a need for 750,000 more digitally skilled workers over the next 5 years for the UK economy to achieve its digital potential. The economic value add of that is circa £11 billion per annum. And I would imagine that the opportunity in Ireland is probably a sixth or a fifth of the size of the opportunity in the UK, given the skills we have in the economy here. So, as a corporate, I think we have a number of roles to play. We need to engage with all the key partners, but we also have to take responsibility and lead and drive for this future by engaging directly with young people. We have focused particularly on the area between 18 and 25 and developed initiatives like Think Big, Talentum and Wyra. Each of these have different ambitions, but share this common goal to create a Europe that is more successful and entrepreneurial by engaging with our digitally enabled young people. Practically speaking, that will also be good for my business and for all of our businesses as people are more engaged in the technologies and services of the future. So, what are we actually doing to close this opportunity gap? Well, a couple of examples, and one that some of you will see later. We're investing in accelerators and startups all across the globe. We now have 14, including one here in Dublin, under the Wyra brand. And the brand Wyra is a Quechuan, Central Latin American word for wind. It's the wind of change. We've already helped to set up some 300 startups in the last 3 years, and 70% of those are now commercially trading. For our young people, we're going into schools as a corporate, doing what Marcus said, engaging people, developing their aspiration and interest in the corporate world. And we have just launched in last week actually, a Think Big school in Brussels. We've given 3,500 young people insight to making the web in partnership with the Mozilla Foundation. And we inside our own organization have built what we call our Talentum program, which attempts then to match that interest in digital with opportunity, whether it be our WIRA program, whether it be internships, apprenticeships, and graduate programs. And by 2015, we expect to recruit an additional 6,000 young people across Europe through that program. The other key thing that I think corporates can do and a business of our size can do is to engage other partners to work together, to act as a convening force, as we passionately believe that business and government working together can deliver even more. So in summary, my ask today is to encourage all of you to engage and collaborate to help to build a digital future together, to ensure digital becomes the fourth literacy, and thereby ensuring that the innate digital potential of Europe's young people is acknowledged, developed, and harnessed to deliver an inclusive and rewarding smart economy, aspiration matched to opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ronan. Really appreciate that. Thank you. And next up, we have Mark Redmond, who is CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce.
Margaret, thank you very much. Can I begin by really congratulating Stuart Dwyer, Charge d'Affaires at the Embassy, and his team for, I think, a superb conference. Well done. Thank you. Margaret, I just want to pick up on the themes raised by our president of the Chamber, Louise Phelan, and she really is challenging us to say, how are we going to reach a smart people in a smart economy? And if I may add, to my own agenda to that, and a smart society. What are the decisions we're going to take in terms of where we invest in education to make that a reality? And, our Taoiseach spoke about identifying the next wave of technology that's going to wash over these shores. And it's interesting, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back for certain reasons to 1989. And in 1989, waves of technology had already happily benefited Ireland. If you look at a company like IBM, which is here since 1956, and transforming the way skills were generated and the kind of work that was done here in Ireland. And if you take IBM, it's a transformed company today in those 25 years. Partly exemplified by the Innovation Centre they now have in Mulhuddart, a fantastic development. But things have changed. The way we use technology in our homes and our workplaces is transformed. The kind of skills our young people will need to be able to demonstrate is going to be so different if we're going to continue to retain and attract the next wave of technology revolution washing around the globe. But we are really well placed right where we're sitting to be able to do that. To use an IBM phrase, this is a smarter city today than it was 2 years ago. We are in the middle of digital Docklands, Dublin. Within a small walk from here, you can talk to the leaders of the technology revolution that's happening. So we're so well placed, and an event like this helps us to tap into that wisdom and that learning. Look at the nature of the work done by the 115,000 employees of US companies operating in Ireland. Again, it is transforming, it is transformative. Just to give an example of 3 jobs currently available on the American Chamber Ireland website. We're looking for an analog design engineer, we're looking for a game measurement analyst, and we're looking for a customer intelligence executive serving the Finnish market. That's fantastic, and that's going to keep changing. And we need to be ahead of the curve in making sure our folks have the skills to match the opportunities. I'm really blown away by the innovations in services and products happening across Ireland by US companies operating here. And we need to make sure we don't get complacent, because if you rewind the clock back a number of maybe a decade, we were really confident that if we attracted the jobs here, we would fill them. We can't be that complacent today. We need to think smarter about how being sure when we land these great projects, they have the confidence that we have the people to match those opportunities. So the factors that made Ireland famous for inward investment in previous decades, they no longer are great differentiators. And we have to challenge ourselves. What's Ireland going to be famous for in the next decade to make sure we stay global leaders for innovative companies and employers? And I'm going to suggest, Margaret, the thing we should be famous for is that we have the unbelievable talent pool of smart, ambitious, and adaptable young people that can fill those jobs.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that. And I think it's no harm that we're also known for the crack. Definitely helps in attracting young people here. I think they want to work here and enjoy the lifestyle and the wonderful humor of the Irish people. So thank you very much for that, Mark. Now we have Breen MacCraith, and he's president of Dublin City University. Welcome.
Thanks, Margaret, a graduate of our university. Delighted to be here with you. Good morning, everybody. As educators in a publicly funded system, we have two primary responsibilities. First of all, at the individual level, I believe that our responsibility is to ensure that our students and ultimately our graduates can flourish in 21st century society in a very challenging world. And that's in their private lives, in civic society, and in particular in the workplace. On a societal level, we're publicly funded. I believe we have a key role to play in actually economic and social development of our nation. And in an increasingly knowledge-based society, we have a primary responsibility as well in terms of contributing to future prosperity of this nation. So I'm going to mention just 5 brief points. I'm going to make a single observation and make a recommendation. The first one is around identifying the attributes which we want to build into our education system. I did an exercise in my first year in office talking to over 70 leaders of the major employers in Ireland, asking them what were they looking for in graduates. And there was remarkable consistency around the attributes which build upon the deep disciplinary knowledge. They were around problem solving, around leadership, effective communications, creativity and innovation. I believe that we should integrate those into our education system as a continuum, starting all along from primary level, from early childhood, primary level onwards. It's remarkable to note that we don't have a national strategy, a single national strategy for education. That's a remarkable gap. But if we did so, I think we could identify what we're trying to do and build on that in a coherent fashion. The second thing is that the most of teaching and learning behaviour in Ireland is driven by assessment modalities, particularly at second level, where you know that the single terminal examination, the Leaving Cert, drives a behaviour for almost 6 years, which is not producing the sort of attributes we want. The major problem is we don't have a national resource or national centre of expertise in assessment where we can use both digital technologies and other state-of-the-art knowledge around this. So that's a major gap. In terms of innovation, and I absolutely agree with Ronan, there's a remarkable generation coming through at the moment, Generation Y, which are driven by creativity and innovation, but in particular by social impact. We launched last year an accelerator program for undergraduates, YouStart, and we also launched a new program around social entrepreneurship with Ashoka U. We became a changemaker campus. The energy that drew on from our students and the creativity was remarkable. But apart from the impact that has societally, the learning experience from our students was remarkable. And I think in terms of creating an innovative and an innovation-rich society, the experiential learning we can achieve through that is huge. And again, I go back to building in a coherent approach to an understanding of innovation and entrepreneurship on a continuum basis fully along the education system would be a huge plus in terms of stimulating mindsets in that regard. Fourth point, STEM education. We cannot build a knowledge society without a world-class STEM education all the way through from primary onwards. I'm chairing at the moment a national review of STEM education for government. We're identifying the multifaceted nature of this, but there are many aspects which people in this room could assist with, particularly where we develop new learning modalities, peer-to-peer project-based learning, and in particular the use of technology in that regard. The fifth aspect is around digital. It's been said again and again. Neelie Kroes in the past week, the digital commissioner, said that by 2020, 90% of all jobs will require not just digital literacy, but digital intelligence. And I think given how fortuitous it is that we're surrounded in Ireland by the leaders, I think 9 of the top 10 digital companies in the world within 20 minutes of this building, we're not utilising that opportunity to the full. And my final point in that regard is, we heard earlier on from Louise in terms of what many companies are doing, but they're all doing it individually. Jim O'Hara, when he was head of Intel for over 10 years, said that over 20 million euro was spent on CSR in the education space, but not a single thing changed as a result. The impact was fragmented and localized. I believe perhaps catalyzed by the US Embassy, certainly perhaps catalyzed by AmCham. If we pool resources across the sector for a defined period of time, we could actually impact remarkably on our education system, particularly at a time when the government, by virtue of austerity, cannot invest at the appropriate levels to do this. But imagine if we had a pool of 10 million a year for 3 years, what could be done at teacher level, technology level, STEM education, entrepreneurship, right across all our schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Breen. Appreciate that very much. And now we're moving on to Sean O'Sullivan, who is the founder of SOSVentures.
Thank you, Margaret, and thanks for the U.S. Embassy for hosting this event. So I think for me, you know, the title of the talk here is Innovation Rich versus Innovation Poor. And, you know, having myself grown up poor, I can testify that it doesn't matter what your economic background is in order to be able to be an innovation leader and to actually be able to have an environment, even in Ireland, even in our stressed economic times today, to be able to be an accepting environment for richness and innovation. And really to be acceptance of, you know, to be an acceptance of this, really we have to ask how are we willing to accept disruption from the go? You know, if we accept, you know, transformation, if we can accept disruption, if we can accept the upset of the status quo, you know, then we can move ahead. So when we look at our classrooms today, are they very much different than they were 150 years ago? You know, is it much different than, you know, a teacher sitting up in front of the classroom and people working out of copybooks and textbooks? You know, hopefully instead of the oil lamp, now we have electricity, and maybe we have some internet. But is it very much different? How much have we really changed our pedagogy? I actually think we should be looking to some massive disruption. And I call into mind the quote of Buckminster Fuller, who says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." So, you know, I mean, we look to industry. Industry does this all the time, right? You know, used to be when I grew up, they were just coming out with a new form of computer. It's called the personal computer. And now nobody even does that. They don't do laptops even. Jesus, that's a new form of computer. Now they do tablets. No, who needs a tablet? You actually have these little phones, right? Or phablets, or whatever you want to call them. We look at industry as an incredibly disruptive force, and it is just changing day by day by day. You look at the record industry, it was records, it was cassette tapes, it was 8-tracks, it was CDs, and now it's streaming. Everything is changing continuously. Are we changing education that quickly? And are we benefiting from all the tremendous technological innovations that have happened? Are we accepting untraditional learning? What are, like, I was I was a judge at this panel, Student Startup Weekend at UCC. And by the way, our institutions can lead this change, right? There's no question that our institutions can and must lead this change of disruption, of transformation. But, you know, as I said, I was a judge at this panel this weekend, and the students had come together, and the university had hosted this event, and people were pitching, and actually a father of one of the finalists, came up to me just before the panel and said he saw me at the event. His son didn't win, but his son did very well. He got an honorable mention, and he's 16 years old. That particular boy, and he pitched a startup. It's very transformative. He learned a lot in 54 hours without sleeping, about what it takes to build and pitch a startup. So, that's an untraditional model. As you may know, I'm the primary supporter of Coder Dojo, is the largest backer of the Khan Academy. Mathletes is a competition that's running in Ireland right now, in cooperation with the Department of Education and hundreds of teachers, schoolrooms, classrooms across the country. These are untraditional models of learning, and yet they are so enabling and empowering that there is no question that in just the 2 months since Mathletes was introduced, and the 3,500 kids that have logged over 500,000 minutes of STEM education on the Khan Academy system, there is no questions that dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of people's lives are changed for the rest of their life by the opportunities that this is going to open up for them. And so let's accept transformation, and let's challenge ourselves to move faster, quicker, and do things better than ever before, because we cannot waste our next generation's lives and our minds of our children. That's all we need. You want to get out of this economic malaise? Just get that education. I grew up poor. I'm now on the Irish rich list and on the British rich list and everything else. What's the difference between where I was and where I am now? It's education, it's acceptance of STEM education, and it's the transformation and willingness to drive that through. We can do that for our economy, and we are doing that for our economy, and we can do that for our kids and for our future, and we can lead in this area. Ireland can be a world leader in this, and we are on the go. So anyway, sorry, I'm sure I've run over my time. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Sean. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Deirdre Smith, who's the Director of Greenpoint Consultancy. Deirdre?
And I'm going to be the one to make Margaret do that one-legged hop. I think it's great you're all here today, and there are so many different perspectives. And I have a number of perspectives based on my background. So I'm one of those techies, one of those female STEMs, electronic engineering from Trinity. And I went straight away into an American multinational digital equipment corporation. Now, they didn't believe in the personal computer either, and they're not around now, but it was a fantastic start for me. And I went from there to being a tech founder and to growing a company and selling a company to another American corporation, Harris. So thank you, America. And now I'm involved with a lot of startups, and in particular Going for Growth, which is for female entrepreneurs and really works with female CEOs who are very ambitious and want to grow their businesses. And that gives me a different perspective again. And I'm also a parent, only 2, Steve, you're winning that battle. And I think I wanted to make a couple of points, but the first one is not to forget the parents, because the parents are highly influential in second level with regard to subject choices for the state exams and with regard to course choices for third level. And we actually need to educate the parents and give them the confidence to realize there are a number of different paths and not to always push their kids into those courses that have the very same name as the jobs that follow. And maybe they need role models and a little education. But I'm going to go right back and tell you a story about my daughter, Ava, who was in 6th class last year. So that's the 11 to 12 age group in primary school. And her class got involved in a cake sale for a charity. And they spent several afternoons in the house planning what they would bake, who would bake it, how they would lay out the stall, what it would all look like. They did the posters. They even robbed my poker jar for their float. And I thought, this is fantastic. And I approached the teacher and I said, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to introduce the concept of enterprise. What are they doing here? They're effectively starting a business. They're getting involved in planning, operations, production. There was even a bit of quality control with regard to my rocky roads. They got involved in marketing, sales, finance. No budgeting, but then startups never do. Now, I was very sorry that the teacher did not take me up on it, but I certainly did. And with those girls, I talked about ambition and vision and starting businesses. And that brings me to a second point, which is that STEMers are not always the same as entrepreneurs. When you combine the two, you get rich guys like this. But what draws people into STEM subjects is very often a very single-minded focus. They're the inventors, they're the innovation makers, and there can be very different people to entrepreneurs who are, the chancers and the renegades and the risk takers. They're the ones who see the opportunities to make money from the innovation. And hence I see the third point would be that there are skills gaps for both of those types of people. For the entrepreneurs, there are a lot of good programs that help tech entrepreneurs in particular. There's wonderful, DIT programs and the DCU Start and the Cork BIC and New Frontiers and so on, and lots of, the Web Summit. But for the non-tech entrepreneurs, there is definitely a gap. And I'm not just talking about my Going for Growth women or my future daughter, but there are a lot of non-tech entrepreneurs. And what I think we need to look at is the T in STEM. There aren't that many courses that really teach people how to apply technology to their business. So I think we need something that looks at cloud computing, Office 365. What are the services and platforms that we can get over the cloud? Effective web design, SEO, all those Google stuff. How to build e-commerce into the business right from the beginning. How to really use social media, Facebook, Twitter, and not waste all of the hours of the day on it. Apps for mobile and location-based business. So that from the beginning they're thinking about that with regard to their businesses. How to use the technology in collaborations, WebEx, Dropbox, you name it. How to use technology to increase their productivity, to help with procurement, with processing bills, Salesforce.com for their CRM. So what I want us to look at more is that T in technology and how to embrace technology across all aspects of their businesses and across all types of business, and to look at technology not just for tech's sake, but how it drives innovation across the value chain, and it's tech as a means to an end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deirdre, for your points. Extremely well made. And I must admit now that I have been mentored by Deirdre for the Going for Growth program, and as a result of that, we landed a major 4-year contract with a European institution. And that is because programs like that help people be more ambitious as entrepreneurs and to look outside of their ecosystem. And I want to address the first question. We'll come back to you, Deirdre, but I want to address the first question, Sean, to you and to Breen. And this is around what you said, Sean, about can we stand up setting the status quo? And being an entrepreneur means disrupting. It means disruption, it means rocking the boat, which is one of my favorite things to do, and it means thinking about things differently. But Irish culture and education does not necessarily encourage that. As you say, our system is based on kind of rote learning. Now it has come on a little bit in terms of its use of technology and projects and continuous assessment. But how do you change an educational system that doesn't encourage disruption, critical thinking, and new ways of looking at problems, and exactly what we're talking about today, which is innovation? What do you think? And then, Breen, I'd like to hear what you have to say about that as well.
I think the best way to do these things is often bottom up. I mean, people are using all the technologies that you described in your last, the Dropbox and all the cloud computing models that accelerate sharing, slideshare.net and all these different ways that teachers are drawing down information. Teachers themselves need to lead the revolution, and then the best practices, they emerge, and they should be rapidly adopted. Where there are best practices that we can learn from like, for example, what the Khan Academy is doing in school districts in the United States and in the state of Idaho. Ireland could be the first country in the world to roll out the Khan Academy, which is an online system for learning anything about science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as other topics. And it's basically a YouTube library of everything you need to know, from kindergarten through postdoctorate. And these things, this innovation is going to happen from, whether or not even teachers are involved. I mean, it'll happen with kids finding out on the internet, learning through Coder Dojo, through other means like this, and driving it forward. And then hopefully we can recognize the successful things, and as as a small country, move to adopt them extremely rapidly. If, for example, we are able to determine that Khan Academy would help all of our students learn math 20% faster, then we would be the #1 country in the world in math education. We beat all the Asian countries, everybody, if we implemented Khan Academy across the system. That wouldn't cost much because Khan Academy is free. Like most of this stuff, Wikipedia, YouTube, it's basically free. If you pay Telefonica a little charge for the bandwidth. No problem. Somebody has to, grease the skids. So this is it's just amazing. This is what we need to do. We need to be, looking at models like this, and we are. I mean, even Breen, you're going next. Breen and I have been talking about this for a year or more, just about this idea of rolling out Khan Academy throughout all of Ireland and taking the world lead. We have more work to do on that. But Mathletes, for example, is the first step on that campaign.
So Breen, I want to bring you into this. There's this kind of age-old conflict between traditional reasons for education and our quickly evolving technologies, right? So people say, what is an education for? Well, an education is for opening your mind. It's not necessarily training you for a job. So at an institution like DCU, which, as you say, I attended, that is always looking forward, that is looking for what's next and what's new, how do you manage that conflict between the two?
Well, first of all, I don't believe it's a conflict. I think if I can go back to the primary question here is, in terms of adopting new technologies, adapting our education system to give the best education for our young people. The first thing is, it's a very precious responsibility we're given as educators. So while we would always take note of developments, I think we need a very strong evidence base for any major decisions we take. Reform is happening all the time, but it can't be whimsical, it can't be reactive. It actually has to be tested in terms of significant evidence. The second thing is Sir Michael Barber, who would be regarded as one of the major commentators on education developments worldwide, has a famous quotation which is, an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. So the quality of teachers, the quality of teacher preparation is absolutely fundamental. And there are major changes happening in Ireland in that regard in terms of new institutes of education being created. We're involved in one of those where St Patrick's College Drumcondra, Mater Dei Institute, Church of Ireland College of Education, all coming together with us to create this new vision of the future of teacher preparation in a research-intensive atmosphere where teachers will be coming out at the cutting edge of knowledge in digital learning, in STEM education, in special needs education. So that's crucial. The third thing is something I mentioned earlier on, assessment. Anybody who knows a teacher, I'm married to one myself, I'm the son of 2 teachers. Assessment modality drives both teaching and learning behaviour. I believe in the Leaving Certificate we have a 19th century assessment approach. We need to be bringing in more nuanced, more sophisticated assessment modalities, many of which can employ digital technologies to actually create new forms of learning, stimulate learning. And the last thing I would say is resources. We have a very stretched education system at all levels at the moment. Teachers are doing remarkably well at all levels, given the circumstances. And that's going back to what I talked about earlier on, pooling resources. Teachers are doing wonderful jobs, but could do an awful lot more if they were supported in CPD and technology and so on. Delivering broadband to a school and thinking that's it is like driving a road to a hospital and expecting us not to train doctors. We have to absolutely support the teachers through CPD and at initial teacher education level to be the leaders of a future reformation of our education system. So there's multiple aspects together. The digital learning aspect is the final point I'll make, is this. There are remarkable things can be done to enhance the learning experience of students by exploiting the affordances of digital technologies. We're starting to do that now, and we're seeing remarkable changes in both the engagement of our students in that sort of environment, but also in their learning experience and how quickly they can embrace new concepts.